If she looked at me, I'd just look away.
The Sonic Scream is one of, if not my favorite, superpowers. Superboy's tactile telekinesis also comes to mind, but for superpowers at large, few are as interesting as the Sonic Scream. First of all, the ability is in a weird spot for relevancy. It's not like the aforementioned tactile telekinesis where only a few people even know what it is and is only used by a handful of characters, but it's nowhere near as ubiquitous as super strength, flight, or even telepathy. None of this is to say that the power is obscure or hard to come by. You've seen it before, it's easy to identify, and many popular characters use it or something like it. But once you get outside of popular established users, the Sonic Scream itself is actually lacking in representation.
Yep, that's gotta be it. That's gotta be her special power.
How about
The Sonic Scream, if you don't know, can be kind of confusing. Breaking down the definition of each word will get you nowhere, but it does look the part. You may not understand what the Sonic Scream is from the name, but if I showed you this, I'm sure you would understand. The power itself is put simply a scream or shout so loud that it can be used offensively. It can be a physical thing where the actual sound waves of a person's voice are causing the damage, or even a more energy-based ability where it's less their actual voice and more of an ability they can call upon. The power typically manifests as a stream of waves or a bunch of rings projected at the user's intended target. This isn't the only way the power shows up, but it is the one you will see most often. The Sonic Scream is usually very destructive. When used, you can find people running for cover, clutching their ears in pain, and the effect that the scream has on the environment can be staggering, which is why it's usually seen sparingly. Some users, after screaming at the top of their lungs with the force of an explosion, tend to be exhausted and may need some time before they can scream again or do anything at all. The Sonic Scream is unique in that it can vary wildly between characters. Most opt to go with a more classic look and usage of the ability, while some go for a more realistic feel, and instead of a blast or a projectile, what you get is nothing more than a really loud scream. Then you have those whose scream is all their own. Take Present Mike from My Hero Academia, whose scream is a lot more wild in its presentation, with a ring pattern that's all over the place and actual visible letters that come out as he screams. He also uses a directional device, which I like for the uniqueness of it, but I personally prefer a less contained scream. The user plants their feet, takes a deep breath, and throws their arms down or back as they put everything they have into one really potent shout. Black Canary, perhaps the most famous Sonic Scream user, can be often seen using her powers in this fashion. I like that she only has the Canary Cry, and that her use of it most of the time is blunt and to the point, even though some iterations show her using it with a lot more control and less conventionally. Cersei from Generator Rex stands out for having more than a few uses for her sonic abilities. She's able to tune her scream to different frequencies to affect different objects, and can also use it to attract her kind, the Evos, Generator Rex's in-universe version of mutants. I appreciate how drastically Cersei's mouth changes when she activates her scream. It's a really nice addition to such a classic ability. The Sonic Scream most of the time is central to the user's power set. Powers like phasing or flight are not often one's sole ability, but for most characters like Banshee, Silver Banshee, or Black Canary, the Sonic Scream is the core that all their other stuff builds around. Now, there's characters like these three, and then there's Black Bolt. Another really popular Sonic Scream user. Black Bolt's claim to fame is having a voice so powerful that even a whisper is enough to level a building, while a full-on shout can take out planets. Black Bolt actually has a lot of different abilities, but even more so than Black Canary, his whole shtick is his voice. He's a quintessential Sonic Scream user in that he doesn't have much control over it, and when he lets it go, there isn't much that can stand in the way.
Oh, that's right. You can't talk, can you? Your voice is so powerful, it would destroy half of Attilan if you said anything at all.
To make myself clear, the Sonic Scream for me is about power and destruction. I prefer a classic Soundwave approach, and while having multiple uses for the ability is nice, the ideal Sonic Scream is one that can only be used to deal a lot of damage, leaving nothing in its wake and the user exhausted. So with that in mind, it's time for the reason I made this video, my favorite Sonic Scream and Sonic Scream user, Danny Phantom and his ghostly wail.
Like the new power? I call it
My ghostly wail.
Damn near Danny's ultimate move, the Ghostly Wail is a perfect sonic scream. Really nice ring pattern, incredibly powerful, and it's both Danny's actual voice and a power that he has to activate. Most importantly, when he uses it, Danny often plants himself in one spot and takes in a deep breath before putting everything he has into one potent scream, leaving him powerless and tired most of the time. The power is first developed by the older all-ghost version of himself seen in Ultimate Enemy. The wail is strong enough to destroy a citywide force field while also shattering a bunch of glass inside the force field. It can lift tanks and cars right off the ground, and according to Ember, can even be used to destroy someone's vocal cords.
You look like I went to seed right after you destroyed my vocal cords with that ghostly wail of yours!
My favorite thing about Danny Phantom is how it manages to take a slew of ghost tropes and find a use for them. Taking the ominous moans of a ghost and turning it into a sonic scream to me is genius. It doesn't seem forced, it sounds great, and making it a part of Danny's character development ends up working really well.
I can do this.
You don't have to. Cover your ears and get behind me.
What attracts me to the sonic scream is the catharsis of it all. After venting, I tend to let out a grunt or just yell for a second, almost as a sigh of relief. I've expressed all my negative emotions and can now start thinking of solutions and healing. That's why I relate to and want to see a sonic scream drain the user. In a way, I understand the feeling. Being able to let out all my frustration and anguish in one sustained stream of destructive waves would just be so nice. But since that dream could never and should never be a reality, living through my favorite characters whenever they scream is enough. The sonic scream is perhaps my favorite superpower, and now that we are here at the end, I hope I did a good job of explaining why.
Wanna hear a secret?